Alrighty, and welcome to episode 2, part 2 of the Unsolved Cerkvenick Murders. I'm your host, Peyton, and my co-host, my partner in weird crimes, Paige. I don't know, they can't all be great. So, we are starting on episode 2 after we got some tips about Mayor Anton Novak in the Cerkvenick Murders. So
yes,
let's just get started.
Dive right in.
Paige, you have the floor.
Why, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Anton J. Novak, he was born in either 1891 or 1892. It's unclear because it talks about him being 60 years old at the time of the murders and the trial.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't say when his actual birthday is. It just says he's 60 years old during all of it.
Yes.
So either 1891 or 1892. He left his native Bohemia, which basically consisted of parts of Austria, Bavaria, Saxony, and Lustria. So at age 17 is when he left his homeland, and he kind of drifted around Illinois for about 3 years, which kind of a random state to drift around in.
Right. You go from Ellis Island to Illinois.
Right. So he settled in Panama when he was 20 years old because of the coal mine. So he actually worked in the coal mine pretty much the entire time it was open and up until it closed in 1933. For a few years after it shut down, he actually was employed as a watchman for the mine. And he was basically a security guard.
I'm sorry, I'm imagining him as like a watchman from that movie.
I know, that's immediately what I thought of too.
Okay. I'm sorry, continue.
It's not just you.
No, okay, good.
Because our brains kind of work the same.
He's so. with a band of misfits.
Yeah. So he was watching the mining property.
I only like half watched that movie, so I really don't know what it's about. Continue.
Yes, same. So Ryan
that are really on the same page. Okay.
Ryan watched it. I don't know.
Okay.
It's fine.
We'll get it from him.
We won't, but it's okay.
Right.
So he ended up leaving that job because they kind of didn't pay him for a while. So he's like, yeah, screw you. I'm going to leave.
Yeah, being a superhero doesn't pay. Okay.
It really doesn't.
Are they superheroes?
I don't know.
Okay, go ahead.
So after he left being the watchman, he got a job as a coal passer in the state power plant in Springfield. He left it in 1948 because he injured his leg on the job. At this point in time, during working in the coal mine, again, not sure when, but he got married. Don't know what her name was because she's not actually mentioned by first name in any of the stuff that I found. Right. So she's just mentioned as Mrs. Novak. They had one son. His name is Anton Novak Jr. And he ended up living
Junior.
Very original there. He ended up moving and living in Staten Island, New York.
Yes.
Novak had always been a prominent figure in Panama. He was there for 40 years is how long he had lived in Panama. So he was very helpful with all the foreign-born citizens. He helped them with citizenship papers and other legal matters. So very prominent in that community. He had been friends with the John Lewis, and he ended up being
John Lewis from the first episode that was prominent with the mine. Yes, in case you forgot.
Right. So, or didn't listen to the first one, which spoiler alert, you kind of need to. He actually was the president of the local miners union. Lurkers.
In the Lurkers Miners Union.
Your mariners union.
Oh, okay.
So after the mine had shut down and he worked his little side jobs, and then after he left the coal passer's job in Springfield, he became very active in Democratic politics. He had planned actually to move to Staten Island, according to Novak, after the mine had shut down. They wanted to be there to be with their son. So went as far as selling his house, and it was kind of thought to be one of the nicer homes in Panama. He ended up selling his house for $4,500, which
my car is not even worth that much.
I mean,
actually, I think that's about what my car is worth.
Probably. So he sold his house for $4,500, paid off a $1,000 grocery bill, which not sure how grocery stores worked back then, but why are you racking up $1,000 grocery bill in 1950, 1948, 1949-ish? How are you doing that?
I honestly, like, that hurts my brain a little bit.
I know. Well, and he mentions that his wife had raised, what are the chickens? So they had chickens, so they had produce that way, and so $1,000 grocery bill. What are you buying?
I want to know, was that a one-time like visit or was it multiple? Because I mean, like, I'm sorry, but even now it would take a lot for me to spend $1,000 at like Walmart or something.
No kidding.
So
it said paid off $1,000 grocery bill, so it sounded like
he just kept giving people IOUs.
Yeah, so he's like, just put that on my tab, please.
Right.
Anyway,
can I do that now?
So he sold his house for $4,500, paid $1,000 at the grocery store, and then they were living off the remaining $3,500. However, he, quote, didn't like some of the things that were going on in town. Saloons running wide open, allowing kids inside, and other things. I ran for mayor on a reform platform. Yeah. When the people elected me over two opponents, I decided to stay in town. Pretty sure Pa Hap, which our great-grandpa,
Francis Overbaugh.
Francis Overbaugh. You will hear that name again. Pretty sure that Pa Hap was one of the people that he beat. So Pa Hap was running for some things and kept losing, apparently.
Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry. I was like, I kept losing.
He did. And it was this douchebag that kept winning things. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So since he stayed and ended up winning the mayoral race, he ended up renting a house off of Fire Chief John Savant. He was one of the many first responders that ended up being on the scene of the murder.
Yes.
So this now brings us up to where we had left off, first episode, in January of 1952. So the phones were ringing off the hook again, and Mayor Novak's name kept getting brought up. At first, Sheriff Marley was like, it was probably just his political enemies just trying to spread crap.
Right.
But a Hillsborough bank called the sheriff and said that Novak had made a very unusual deposit. The day the bodies were found, let me just say that again. The day the bodies were found, he made a very unusual big deposit.
And what was so unusual about it, Paige?
Well, when the sheriff got to the bank, they were very old and tarnished coins. Seemed like maybe they had been buried. I don't know, it's just speculation. But they were kind of gross. Turns out Novak had been in some financial stress, and he owed a lot of people some money. He paid off those debts the day the bodies were found and afterward. So all of a sudden, I've got some money.
Yeah.
Let me go take this to the bank, and here's your money, here's your money, here's your money. So
also, real quick, I understand like things were much cheaper then, but what a dickhead paying stuff off with change.
No.
know what
I
I'm
know.
saying? Like, I'm sorry, but if I was still a bank teller, if someone was like, hey, I have like a, I don't know, $70 bill, here's some fucking dimes.
Here's my pennies.
Right.
Hold on.
I'd be like,
One,
right. I'd be like, is this a
two.
flippin' joke, sir?
Excuse me, sir. I need you to kindly walk out of the building.
Right. I need you
With
to
your
not come back
coins.
here. Here, let me just close out your account real quick because I don't ever want to see you again.
Here's your receipt. Thank you. So he had been paying off his debts to people around town with the same type of old money and coins.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just being a dick about it.
Right, exactly.
So it had always been rumored, again, we had mentioned this in the first episode, that the Cerkvenicks had old money buried around their house. But again, kids were like, we don't know anything about that.
Right.
A lot of speculation.
Mm-hmm.
But since Novak had the best access to the Cerkvenick home, and he ended up having a .32 caliber pistol, which we will talk about later, sheriff had talked to Bond County officials because, again, Mayor Novak's house was situated in Bond County, where the Cerkvenicks were in Montgomery. They were able to obtain a search warrant on Friday, January 18th, from the Bond County officials to search Novak's property, since they had already taken the coins as evidence. When they got to Novak's house, Mrs. Novak let him right in. So they technically didn't need the warrants. They did not find any incriminating evidence, but they did take him in for questioning. So again, this was on Friday. So they took him in for questioning on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
They brought him in to question him about the coins. So his story was that he found the coins while he was working as the watchman for the mine after it had closed. He said he buried the coins on his own property after he found them.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would dig them up if he needed more money. But then Marley was like, wait a second.
Let's
you said you
trash
found
that
them.
theory.
Let's think about this. He said, and quote, you said you found them in the mine vault 20 years ago. You said you found them in the mine vault 20 years ago, but there are coins dated 1936 and some as late as 1942. You didn't find those 20 years ago.
Absolutely not.
Here comes Sheriff Marley with the shade. I love it.
He's like, hey, you lying sack.
He said his answer was that he sometimes dug it up and added more coins to it.
And again, that ain't happening because I'm sorry, no man is going to be digging constant holes in his yard. It's not happening.
Might I add that it was said that he was quite a portly man. So he said...
Oh yeah, that's right. Because
in his own words, I'll mention that, but in his own words, he was 45 inches around the waist.
And he was proud.
He's very proud of that.
Yes.
Which is fine, but I don't think he's going and digging stuff up and burying him and digging and burying him.
Right. You go be your portly self, but I doubt you're digging holes constantly.
I doubt it. So anyway, he was questioned over the weekend for 2 more days. He continuously denied knowing anything about the murders, and he refused the lie detector test. So he was released on Monday since they didn't actually have anything on him. But quietly, Sheriff Marley continued to look into him and the Cerkvenicks.
Of course,
because how they were connected.
Because, I mean, if you have nothing to hide, why deny a polygraph? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Shady.
Because they didn't know back then that they weren't that reliable. So it's not really clear on how much time passed after he was released from custody after being questioned about the coins and this happening. But I don't really think it was much time. I'm thinking it was like a week, maybe 2 weeks at the most, that neighbors saw a furniture truck show up at Mayor Novak's house. And all of a sudden, his wife picked up and she left to go visit her son in Staten Island. So John Savant, who was the landlord, he asked Novak, hey, what's going on? Do you guys plan on moving? Novak's like, no, all's well. It's all good. I'm staying. Don't worry about it. Nope.
Right.
But then in late February, early March, around about, I heard both accounts, like late February and early March, Novak quietly slipped out of town in the middle of the night and left for New York.
Mm-hmm.
So he left via train out of New Douglas. But he also left behind him a big rent bill that he didn't pay. That was one of the his landlord was one of the people that he did not pay off.
Jesus.
So he didn't notify the town board that he was leaving. So by March 15th, the board had to officially declare the post vacant, and they appointed Frank Monty. He was a grocery store operator, probably the one that he paid $1,000 to for some reason.
Probably.
They appointed him as interim mayor until the 1953 election. Supposedly, which I don't know if this is true or not, but supposedly I did read that Novak sent Sheriff Marley a letter from Staten Island saying, "Hey, this is where I'm at. This is why I'm here." That's just,
I doubt it.
That's just crazy to me that he did that because of how he left town. When
Yeah.
he kept telling everybody, "No, I'm not leaving, I'm not leaving, I'm not leaving," all of a sudden you pick up and move in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that's you're not going to write a letter. No, that's not.
I mean, you're kind of a fugitive from justice. You were questioned in a murder investigation. You're one of the persons of interest. You can't leave the state.
Yeah, exactly. I
let alone the town. I mean, come on.
Right. Continue.
The next day after they appointed the new mayor, on March 16th, the hunt was on again for the murder weapon. Now, I'm not sure why they didn't check these places before, like back in November and December when they were trying to find a murder weapon. But now is when they searched that well on the other side of Novak's property.
Well, they probably had to wait till it unfroze.
That could be because the winters were pretty harsh back then. Either way.
Because a well has water in it and water.
I know, and which I'm getting at because they had to pump the well dry.
Of course. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to interrupt.
So stop interrupting. This is my episode. I'm going to be interrupting you in your episode.
So you shut the hell up.
So they pumped that well dry, didn't find anything. They actually searched 5 other wells and cisterns in the vicinity. Still nothing. They were not able to pump the old mine shaft dry because it was full of water to the top and over 350 foot deep. So they were like, okay, don't have the technology or the ability to do this. So what they did instead was they got an electromagnet, and which they normally use to search rivers and lake beds. These are the people in Springfield that did this, B of I. They searched it that way, pulled up some metal things. A gun was not one of them. So in a forked tree on the properties, I believe it's between the properties, they found a old style wine bottle that was filled with some kind of inflammable fuel oil.
Oh, so you didn't tell me it was in a wine bottle.
Yeah, it was an old style wine bottle, it said.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was filled with some type of fuel oil. So this was sent to the Springfield Crime Lab for any kind of fingerprints or to see if this was possibly the accelerant that was used on Joanna. This is super interesting, and I so wish I knew who this person was. So if anybody is listening to this and you know who this was, please tell me, because I would love to talk to this person. Now, it was in 1951, and this person was 12 years old, so probably old. So if you know who it was, and maybe you're a family member, and they've talked to you about it, we would love to hear from you.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So a 12-year-old boy came forward and said that the night before the bodies were found, so on November 16th, 1951, he was out trapping late that night. He was in the field that separated Novak and the Cerkvenick property. It was small town again, so he knew Mayor Novak. Novak knew him, but Novak paid him no attention whatsoever. He completely ignored him, and the boy had said he looked like he was in a hurry. On April 7th, State's Attorney Funk went before the grand jury with all of the evidence and testimony of 41 different witnesses. On April 21st, the grand jury returned the indictments on Anton Novak. Now,
dun, dun, dun.
I am not going to read all of the indictments. There's like 5 of them. What I'm going to tell you, I'm going to read one of them because I am so glad they are not done like this anymore.
You should do it like in hear thee.
Old-timey voice type
Right,
of thing.
yeah.
Okay. And the grand jurors aforesaid, chosen, selected, and sworn in, and for the county of Montgomery aforesaid, in the name and by the authority of the people of the state of aforesaid, upon their oaths aforesaid, do further present that the said Anton Novak, late of the county of Montgomery and state aforesaid, on the 16th day of November, in the year of our Lord 1951, and within the county aforesaid, in and upon one John Cerkvenick, a human being, because we had to specify that. Then and there, in the peace of the people being unlawfully, feloniously, and of his malice aforethought, did then and there make an assault, and that the said Anton Novak, a certain revolver, then and there loaded and charged with gunpowder and bullets, then and there unlawfully, feloniously, and of his malice aforethought, did discharge and shoot off to, against, and upon the said John Cerkvenick, and that the said Anton Novak, with one of the bullets aforesaid, out of the revolver aforesaid, then and there, by force of the gunpowder aforesaid, by the said Anton Novak, discharged and shot off as aforesaid, the said John Cerkvenick, and then there unlawfully, feloniously, and of his malice aforethought, did strike, penetrate, and wound, giving the said John Cerkvenick, then and there with the bullet aforesaid, so shot, discharged, and sent forth out of the revolver aforesaid, by the said Anton Novak, a mortal wound, of which said mortal wound, the said John Cerkvenick languished a short time, and then on the 16th day of November, in the year of our Lord 1951, and there died.
There's so much there I want to make fun of, but I can't remember any of the words because my brain hurt.
Aforesaid. I mean, I'm
Yikes.
again
Yikes.
so glad they are not done like that. So basically, what this says is Anton,
in
shorthand, Anton Novak shot John Cerkvenick, and he died. That is what it could have said.
Okay, so in English.
So, yeah. So the different indictments. This first one says a revolver, because again, by this time, if you remember right, there's no murder weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't actually say exactly what it was. So the first one says a revolver. The second one says automatic pistol, plus all the words I just said. The third one just said that he shot him with a certain reloaded revolver then and there held in his hand. The third and fourth was a little shorter. The fifth one was kill and murder Joanna Cerkvenick, again, a human being. But it does specifically state in here that her cause of death was unknown.
Yeah.
What came with the indictments was a list of witnesses.
Yes.
It's a lot. I mean, so many.
Well, you said there's 41, correct?
Well, that's what it said.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the list of witnesses. I can name them. Do you want me to name them?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I do not want you to read off 40 names.
So, since Novak had left the state while he was a suspect in a murder investigation, and now he had all those indictments out against him, they issued a fugitive warrant for him, which leads me to his docket, his case. So there was actually technically two cases, I guess, out on him.
Mm-hmm.
Case number 603 and 604, because the case numbers were weird back then.
Mm-hmm.
So case number 603 and case number 604, People versus Anton Novak, murder. So the first docket entry says, now on this 21st day of April, 1952, the same being one of the regular judicial days of the April 1952 term of the Circuit Court, Montgomery County in state of Illinois, come the people of the state of Illinois by Otto E. Funk, their state's attorney. It is ordered by the court that the bail be, and the same is hereby fixed in the following amounts set opposite their respective names, and bench warrants ordered, issued as shown. So they did it that way and just issued a bunch of warrants for a bunch of different people. So when they got to Anton Novak, it says number 603, People of the State of Illinois versus Anton Novak, murder, bench warrant ordered to issue. And number 604, same thing. So they didn't actually set any bail. So the warrant was a no bond warrant. So he was getting in, he wasn't getting out, couldn't bond out.
Gotcha.
The sheriff had enlisted the help of the FBI since he was in another state, first of all, and New York, and they knew that he was in Staten Island. They ended up finding him working as a shipping clerk in a brewery.
Oh yeah, so you know that he didn't just go visit if he got a job. Yeah, he was planning. That was he fled.
He was a fleer.
Mm-hmm.
So when they showed up at the store to arrest him, he was later quoted as saying, "I was dumbfounded. They put me in jail. Have you ever been in jail? You don't know what it does to a man. It's all been like a bad dream ever since."
Take a seat.
Now, what I can say is he's in a jail in New York, Staten Island.
Yeah, so I'm sure it's not great.
I'm sure it's a little rough.
Right. It's not like, again, like,
however,
any jail isn't great.
No.
But still, take a seat.
However, you were not there long, and then you came to Montgomery County Jail.
Right, exactly.
Come on.
Take another seat. Take 2 seats. Take 2
if you will.
Right.
So Sheriff Marley and Deputy Hanisco made the trip to New York to extradite him and bring him back to Montgomery County Jail on May 24th. So he had been in Staten Island. So he left late February, early March, and didn't get arrested until it was a little earlier in May when he was arrested, because the indictments came back on April 21st. So he came back on May 24th is when they brought him back. He was held without bond until June 4th when he was arraigned. The first day in court, he's just arraigned. He's just told of his charges, make sure he understands what his charges are. He did not have an attorney at the time. He was informed that he was being held without bond, and they gave him his indictments, and that's when he entered his plea of not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So next court date, June 17th, 1952. Case on this day, they ended up setting the case for trial on July 21st.
Mm-hmm.
So normal amount of jurors that are called are like 50, 60 people. The judge decided to call an additional 30 jurors. On June 17th, they decided July 21st was going to be the jury trial. So it was going to be a month away. So the judge ordered the clerk to, including the 50, 60-ish jurors that were already going to be called and questioned, they wanted to call an additional 30 to help weed through and pick, because obviously Montgomery County is a small county.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of talk. People are going to know about it. Novak, now at this time on June 17th, he did have an attorney, Kenneth Moss. So during this time, they continued to question Novak about the murders. They got out of him that he did, in fact, have a .32 caliber pistol. He bought it in 1935. He had told officials that he had been hunting for turtles in July of 1951 in Shoal Creek. That is not strange. It might be strange to some, but it is not strange around here because Panama does the big mulligan fest turtle soup, basically.
That's what mulligan in it is, in case anyone doesn't know.
Once a year, they do this. So, I mean, it's not strange to hunt for turtles. Not sure that they use guns anymore.
It is strange to hunt for turtles with a pistol, but
this is his story about his pistol.
His claim.
His claim.
Yeah.
So he said he was hunting for turtles in July of 1951 in Shoal Creek. Apparently, he got mad because his gun's recoil slide had caught the skin between his thumb and his forefinger. Not sure how, though, because I'm thinking about it and I'm like, okay.
What the hell was that part of your hand doing up there?
Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and cock my gun here.
Right? That's what I'm saying. Like, how are you doing that?
And it's a 32. I mean, what are we doing here? So he got mad when his skin got pinched, and he's like, screw this. And he threw his gun in Shoal Creek. That's his story about why he no longer has his pistol.
There's everything wrong with that.
So many things.
Right.
Second of all, he did actually change his story later on and said, oh, you know what? maybe it was September that I did that, not July of 1951.
Okay, sweetheart.
Convenient.
Right.
Well, he explained where in Shoal Creek he had thrown it, supposedly. There was kind of a bigger part of the creek, I guess, where there was a kind of a pool, I guess.
Mm.
And it was kind of grown up. It was kind of hard to get to, but he explained where it was. So on June 26th, this was just after the court date of when they set the jury trial. Mm-hmm. On June 26th, deputies Hanisco and Brown, Special Agent J.R. Scott, and photographers Bill Bandor and Jim Kilpatrick of the Montgomery County News went to that spot to look for the gun. They didn't think that it would have settled too much under the soot and everything, because I guess there was some pebbles and rocks that lined where he said he threw it. Mm. So supposedly Kilpatrick and Hanisco were young, athletic, and very good swimmers. So we actually have pictures of them diving down, and we'll post those. So they are very good swimmers. So they went into the creek and searched every inch of the spot that he explained to them, but never found the gun. Supposedly, I guess a gun was found in Shoal Creek. I don't know, like it was over 10 years ago. So like recently-ish compared to the murders. Mm-hmm. And like it was thought maybe that could have been the murder weapon, but I just think he's a lying piece of crap. So I don't think he actually did that.
No,
anyway.
I don't think so.
So this comes to July 9th, 1952. So this was another court date. So they had originally set the trial for July 21st, but I think Novak's attorney had filed a motion. So they did a motion hearing on July 9th. He now has a second attorney, MJ Brown. On the defendant's motion, the jury trial is off. So he withdraws his plea of not guilty and actually files a motion to quash the indictments. So he's trying to just get rid of the indictments. They also filed a motion so he could be admitted to bail, and they set that motion hearing for July 21st instead. So instead of the jury trials, they kept that date just for a motion hearing. So first, he's trying to get the indictments quashed. Second, he's like, hey, set me some bail so I can get out. So July 21st rolls around. The defendant's attorneys made an amendment. Good Lord. Made an amendment to the motion to quash, and it was allowed. The judge hears arguments on both sides and overrules the motion to quash. So he's like, nice try, but no. Novak's attorneys requested, and the judge ordered that the hearing of the evidence as to the admission to bail be heard in chambers. The reason was, as there are so many witnesses to exclude from the courtroom. So courtroom's probably packed, and some of the witnesses are there. They'd have to like, hey, you guys get out. There's too many of them. So they're like, let's just do this in chambers. The evidence was heard, and it was at this point that they adjourned and continued it until the next morning. So July 22nd, 1952, the court hears further evidence for the bail motion. They set the Novak's bail at $15,000 per case. So he was only held on $30,000.
I actually thought it was just 15,000. I wasn't aware that it was 15 per case.
Per case.
Cool.
So he was held on $30,000 bail, which again, it just sounds crazy because most people that are in for murder are set on like $1 million bails now. So
especially a double homicide.
Double homicide.
Right.
Yeah, you're not gonna get out of there unless you're paying way too much money.
Yep.
So after judge sets his bail at $30,000, he then enters his second plea of not guilty. So on September 3rd, 1952, the state requests time to call additional witnesses. So the judge granted the state's motion to add the additional witnesses. And then the trial was then set for September 29th. And then it was at that time that the judge requested an additional 20 jurors to be called. Mm-hmm. So the regular amount plus the 30 plus an additional 20. So he's like, let's get a ton of people in here to question for jurors. September 29th, 1952, the trial begins. So first things first, jury selection. They first asked the first regular group of potential jurors. Then if they didn't find what they were looking for in that group, then they would choose from the additional sets of jurors that they called. At 5 p.m., they were not finished choosing a jury. So it was ordered by the court that the members of the jury who have been selected by people and the defendant, because you have to get okayed by both sides, as well as those who have been called into the jury box for examination, but not yet accepted by either side, they have to be kept together under the charge of the 2 sworn bailiffs of this court, and to return them again to open court tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. September 30th. So they didn't get to go home? I don't think this whole time. So at this point, whoever had been selected already, they didn't get to go home. And the people they had brought to the box to start to question, they also didn't get to go home. So the people who hadn't yet been questioned, they could go. Nobody else went home. And the 2 bailiffs had to watch them.
Also couldn't go home.
I mean,
that's
these
crazy.
poor bailiffs, man.
That sucks.
So September 30th, 1952, the next day, jury selection is resumed. They exhausted all of their juror options. So they literally questioned everybody and still didn't have 12 jurors. So the judge had to order the clerk to summon 10 more jurors for questioning and to be potential jurors.
Well, that also goes to show you like how small of an area it is.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, and word travels fast.
Exactly. They finally get 12 jurors selected, 6 men and 6 women. Then after the jurors were all selected and they brought Novak into the courtroom, it was a huge shock to everyone who hadn't seen him since he had been arrested back in May, because he lost a total of 60 pounds during his 4 months in jail. Some of the information that I got was from a front page, is what the magazine was called, super old magazine. The title of this article that I was reading was called 9 New Notches for the Mayor's Belt, which is kind of a cool title right there.
It is. It draws you in. It's like,
it does. 9 new notches in the mayor belt. What are we talking about here?
Right.
So it said he had said that he wished his wife could have been at the trial, but she had apparently suffered a nervous breakdown and she remained in Staten Island. But his son was able to be there for the trial. The members of the Cerkvenick family had pleaded to stay in the courtroom for the trial, but the judge wouldn't let them because they were all going to be witnesses, and apparently no witnesses could be in the courtroom at all during the trial.
And that
totally
upsets
sucks.
me. Yeah.
Totally sucks.
I can't even imagine that for them.
I know. The only time they were able to come in was when they were called to the bench.
I know. And I would be infuriated.
Oh my gosh. That would be terrible.
Like, it's bad enough that my parents got killed and now I can't even be involved. Yeah.
Yep. Can't even see what's going on.
Yeah.
So jurors are selected. Novak was brought in. Jury trial begins. The opening statements are heard on both sides, but that's pretty much all that they got done that day because the jury selection had taken so long. Plus they had to wait for the other 10 jurors to get possible jurors to get there. So again, jurors are to be kept under the charge of the same bailiffs. So again, I feel really bad for those bailiffs. So October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1952, the jury hears testimony from some of the state witnesses and court is adjourned to the following morning. So, 3 days worth of just the state's witnesses. Some of the people that were mentioned, the notable people that were mentioned as testifying, first one, Francis Overbaugh, aka Pa Hap, our great-grandfather. He was the village treasurer, so that was one thing he did get. Poor Pa Hap. So he was a village treasurer, and he testified that he had handled the license fees for the town's 4 taverns. So again, paying them on their taverns.
Right.
From the town's 4 taverns.
It's a small town, you gotta have something to do.
I know. He did that until July 1st of 1951, so the year previously. So they each paid $66.67 quarterly. But when Anton Novak took over as mayor, he said that he would be collecting the money for the licenses from then on out. So July 1st, when he took the duty over, he collected their money. 2 paid by cash and 2 paid by check. So Overbaugh said that Novak didn't turn in the checks, mind you. He didn't turn in the checks until September of 1951 after receiving them on July 1st. By October, the board had to demand from him to turn over the cash payments because, again, he still hadn't turned over the cash by October. But he said that he had put the cash payments in his lockbox at the bank. Not sure why.
Makes no sense.
No. So he was warned that if he didn't get the cash by the next board meeting in November, that they would levy against his bond. So on November 17th, 1951, the day the bodies were found, he deposited the money into the village account of the Hillsborough National Bank. Convenient.
Because he suddenly had the money.
So when Pa Hap was cross-examined, he did have to admit that that Novak had not only beaten him in the race for mayor, but he had also previously beaten him for precinct committeeman as well. So again, Pa Hap was losing some races, unfortunately.
Yes.
So apparently it was said that Novak also helped his wife, as in our great-grandmother, Violet Overbaugh, Grandma Vi. Novak also helped in Grandma Vi losing the position of township clerk. So he maybe just had a really bad grudge against our family?
I think so.
I don't know. It seems like that.
It's all right.
So there were several tavern keepers who had testified that Novak didn't spend much money in the time leading up to the murders, but definitely was a big spender after the murders.
I wonder why.
With old tarnished coins.
Right. What kind of asshole is a big spender with coins? Like, don't you worry.
Mm-hmm.
I got this. Bill throws down like rolls of coins, like change rolls.
Yep. So, but they were smart and they saved the coins and they were turned over to the sheriff for evidence.
Turned
over to the sheriff.
Turned over to the sheriff.
John Savant, who was fire chief and Novak's landlord, he testified that Novak had moved away without telling them and owed him back rent. He also said once the house was empty, he had found an ammunition box for .32 caliber automatic bullets in the backyard. Eldon F. Davis, who was a fuel oil dealer, said that Novak had owed him some money, but he paid him back in full the day the bodies were found, with old coins. James Slagle testified that 7:30 p.m. on the 16th, his dog was barking, and normally his dog only barked when people were coming up the lane to his house. 30 minutes after he noticed his dog was barking, he had left his house and he saw Novak on the street. They knew each other. So Slagle was like, hey, I'm going to walk here with him for a little bit and try to strike up a conversation. Novak was brushing him off big time. Big time he was brushing him off.
No.
Other people had quoted Novak as saying that he obtained some money by breaking his piggy bank. All right. William Abernathy, who had been in charge of all the lie detector tests, testified that when questioning Novak about his safety deposit boxes, Novak claimed that he had lost the key to the box in November of 1949, but found the key in November of 1951.
Of course.
Convenient.
Of course.
And then on the morning of November 17th, he went to the bank and withdrew some money, took it home, and buried it with the rest of his buried money.
That's what I do with every withdrawal.
Why are
we burying money, people?
It's in a lockbox in a vault at the bank. What are we doing? Okay.
The ground is much more secure. I don't know if you know this.
Apparently. He said that when he had questioned Novak about the night of November 17th, the night that the bodies were found.
Yes.
He said that he had left his house to check on the taverns that he had been receiving complaints about. And he got back to his house at 11 p.m. He decided to go back out to check on the VFW and didn't get home till 2:30, but he couldn't recall his whereabouts on the night of November 16th. I wrote in all caps, convenient. Anyway, Hugo Perfetti, who operated one of the taverns in town, said he had driven Novak to the bank the morning of the 17th. So he was the one that took him there. When they were leaving the bank, that's when word spread, and that's when they found out about the murders. And he said that Novak was just emotionless. He didn't show anything.
Was this one of your surprises? Because I didn't know this.
Maybe. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
So then the Cerkvenick children, they had testified where their parents kept their money. And they said that they kept the funds were separate, but they had thought that their parents had a total of $1,644. And it was brought out that an amount Novak had said he obtained from his piggy bank was almost the same amount of money as they said, like to the penny, as the coins that was supposed to be in the Cerkvenick jar. Yes. The state implied that since the Cerkvenicks kept separate funds, the piggy bank funds had come from a corresponding jar in the Cerkvenick home.
Of course.
So some of the defense witnesses, so this is where we're going back to episode 1. Some of the defense witnesses had brought up the strange cream-colored car that was seen at the crime scene. A service station operator in Litchfield testified that a car of that description had come by on November 16th, and 2 men had asked for directions to Panama. So it's kind of all that they got on that. Don't know who they were. Gotcha. Car was never seen again. But the state brought out a surprise witness. This was Miss Sue Reynolds. She was a Panama housewife. She testified that she had purchased a load of kindling from the Cerkvenick estate auction, and in it, she found a cane, a walking stick. When she examined it, she found some blood on it. Well, she was terrified. She was nervous. She didn't know what to do. So she went to the mayor,
who was a trusted man of the town.
He was a very, very trusted man. He was very helpful. He was soothing, supposedly had a soothing voice. And so went to the mayor.
Eye roll.
Was like,
eye roll.
Mayor, what do I do with this? He's like, and quoted, "My goodness, Mrs. Reynolds, if you show that to the officers, they'll say you have the murder weapon. They'll lock you up and throw away the key." Oh, man.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Because that's not suspicious.
Not at all. Not at all. That's why she was the state's surprise witness. Unfortunately, she got scared because, again, the mayor, who was well respected around town, told her, "I'm trying to look out for you. They're going to think that you're the murderer, so you need to get rid of that walking stick." She burned it because it made her nervous. Yep.
So we no longer have the walking stick as evidence.
No longer have the walking stick.
Which is really, really unfortunate.
Yep. So by October 4th, this was like 4th day of witnesses, the state's witnesses being cross-examined and testifying, all that fun stuff. So the state's evidence by October 4th was now concluded. That was a Friday because it continued again on October 6th. And again, this whole time, I don't think that any of the jurors could go home or the bailiffs because it kept saying like the same bailiffs had to stay.
Oh, no.
So October 6, 1952. So more witnesses were coming out and being questioned and cross-examined. But this day, Novak's attorneys, they filed for a motion, and I quoted this because it was kind of strange, for the court to advise the state's attorney that the court does not regard the competent evidence offered in evidence insufficient to sustain a conviction of the defendant under and of the counts of indictment. So basically, I think what they're saying is the state hasn't come up with sufficient evidence that says that he should be the one indicted for these murders.
Okay.
Yeah. So the judge denied the motion. He was like, "Good try." Then the witnesses were questioned on behalf of Novak, and they were cross-examined. On October 7th, more of the defendant's witnesses, and then the defense rest. So closing arguments are heard, and the jurors are ordered to retire to consider the verdict. I have a little about their closing arguments, because they're kind of fun. And the defense's closing arguments. This is where it just kind of makes me angry.
Okay.
They were saying that the mysterious car, now this part doesn't make me angry, but they were saying that the mysterious car and its occupants hadn't been eliminated from being suspects, which, okay.
I'll give them that. Okay.
I'll give them that. Yeah,
right.
Seriously, because I mean, it's strange.
Yeah, it is a little convenient. I will say that.
Right. And they also touched on the possibility of murder-suicide.
Bullshit. This
is where I want to take this desk and just throw it. Because how?
Exactly.
How is is my question. Because I mean, it really pissed off the courtroom crowd. There were jeers, literal jeers from the courtroom crowd. Because it's like, okay, let's just say that John was the murderer.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say. So he wraps his wife up in a blanket and burns her. It's possible. It is. Why was he in his pajamas, and why was he only half dressed when he shot himself in the chest?
Yep.
That doesn't sit well.
That doesn't make sense.
Not sit well. And why were those bullets found? Well, why were the casings and the slug found in the living room, basically?
Also, the bodies seem to have been moved. So that means John killed Joanna, killed himself, and then moved them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh.
So, and again, what we had kind of talked about as well, I mean, where he would have put the gun.
Yes,
yeah,
the trajectory of the bullets makes no sense.
For a self-inflicted gunshot
yeah,
wound.
exactly.
Now, on the flip side, let's just say Joanna was the murderer. Okay, she very well could have shot John. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. She could have. She could have been dressed already and thought, you know what, today's the day. And he's in his jammies and she's yelling for him and he's trying to hurry up and put on his pants and she comes in, boom. All right. I can believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Ish. Then she wraps herself in a fuel-filled blanket, lays on her husband's bed, and lights herself on fire.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't mean to laugh, but
that's just not, no.
It's because
also,
she's wrapped.
It would be different if her arms were out. Then I could be like, maybe that sounds better.
Because maybe if her arms were like on the east side of the bed, then they would find remnants of her hands at least.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if she's wrapped up in a burrito type style, she's like I said, trying to like
yeah, that's ridiculous. There's no way. And again, like I said, maybe Joanna shot John. And again, we don't know how she died. We have no cause of death.
No cause of death.
Because she was so badly burned that they couldn't even get any evidence out of it.
They had to send her head.
Yeah, just her head.
To forensics.
Not the rest of her body.
No.
So, that being said, who knows? Maybe she shot herself, and then after she died, then she set herself on fire and moved their bodies. Don't forget the moving of the bodies.
Right, that is true. Yeah,
yes.
She really did that.
So she shot both of them.
On.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's just ridiculous.
It's too far-fetched. There's too much weirdness about this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No.
And they stole their money. They took their money.
They stole their own money.
And they stole their money.
And hid it.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. So his attorneys had also said because of the intense political rivalry, that's why he had been considered in the first place.
Okay.
For the murders.
Okay.
And we're going to add to that, the ammunition box that was found could have been dropped by a hunter. No big deal.
Okay.
Because hunters would have dropped their ammunition box and left it.
Right. You need
that. So the state's closing arguments. He was asking for a life sentence. He also decided that he would be reenacting what he thought had happened the night of the murders, which is super interesting. And I'm kind of on board with what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
So he said that Novak was hurting for money, obviously.
Yes.
And he needed to pay back all the liquor license fees and the debts that he had owed. So he thinks that Novak had started to the Cerkvenick home in the early evening. But if you remember right, John Slagle's dog had kind of started freaking out.
Yes.
Which freaked Novak out. So he went back home. Didn't really stay home very long because he thinks when he went back out, that's when Jim Slagle, my apologies. Jim Slagle had seen him walking and tried to talk to him. So he got to the Cerkvenick home to demand them to give him money. When they refused him, Novak hit Cerkvenick with his walking stick, hint the blood on the stick. He shot him and then shot Mrs. Cerkvenick. It was then that he had set the fire that he had hoped would cover up all the evidence. He then found Joanna's money, but failed to find John's because for some reason it was in the basement in the rafters. Not sure why. So basically at the end, and I'm doing this as a quote because I think it sounds fantastic. It's like a really cool line. It's like a line from a movie, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because in regards to the defense saying that a hunter dropped the ammunition box, he said, and quote, "What do you hunt with a .32 caliber automatic? People."
Mic drop.
Chills.
Yeah,
Just
because like
chills.
We had discussed, a .32, for someone who doesn't know guns, is a handgun. And you don't go hunting with pistols.
So anyway, the jury then goes back to consider the verdict.
Mm-hmm.
October 8th, 1952, the jurors have officially been considering a verdict for 24 hours, and they are unable to agree. Due to them not being able to agree, they are discharged. The court ordered that all exhibits be returned to the parties that presented them. Side note, because that was the docket, going back to this, the jury not being able to decide. At first, the jury was at 8-4 for conviction,
Mm-hmm.
then to 9-3, and finally 10-2. The two jurors that were hoping for acquittal, they were like, "We'll hold out all winter if we have to. We're sticking to our guns." One of them was a woman, and she was holding for acquittal because she said that she had consulted the spirits and they had told her it would be wrong to vote for conviction.
When you told me that, I was like, what spirits? Like wait, John and Joanna's, or just some run-of-the-mill,
just
like
random spirits?
Christmas ghosts of past and present or whatever. I don't know.
I mean, and like they even went as far as a court attendant had brought her a Bible, which teaches the doctrine an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But her mind was made up.
Oh my God.
The jury was hung and they had to have a new trial. This was when he was interviewed by someone from the front page. So this is where the 9 new notches in the mayor's belt came from.
Mm-hmm.
So Novak was quoted as saying, "Look at me now, the great labor leader, the churchman, and the great political leader. Just come on."
Yeah.
The reporter,
"Look at me, I'm so great."
Yeah. So then the reporter was like,
"Asshole.
Hey, you should eat your meal before it gets cold." But then Novak replied, "I'm not hungry. I seldom have an appetite anymore. I used to be 45 inches around the waist. I've cut 9 new notches in my belt since I've been in jail. But it's the disgrace. The thing that hurts is the character of a man. The way he lives. They're trying to make a rat out of me. I won't let them."
Again.
Okay.
Take a seat.
Okay.
Take 2 seats. Take all the seats at the table.
All of
Take
them.
all the chairs.
Just
take the table too. Take the table.
Seriously. So jury is hung. So at an unknown date, the defendant's attorney filed a motion to reduce the bond, and it's noted by the court.
Mm-hmm.
So November 29th, 1952. Is my
Your anniversary.
I was married in 1952, actually.
Of course. You've been around a long time.
A long time.
You look
So
great.
the defendant's... Thanks. The defendant's attorneys waive a trial by jury, and they request a trial by judge without a jury, and that was also noted by the court.
Mm.
So this time around, they're like, let's get rid of the jury. Let's just do this with the judge. Thinking December-ish, the state files a motion that the case be set for trial at an early date. So the state's like, come on, let's get this shit done.
Yeah.
The court considers it, and he sets it and the judge just sets it for trial by jury, because he just completely ignored the defendant's motion. Trial by jury on January 26th, 1953, and the defendant agrees. Judge denies the waiver of trial by judge. So parties are, yes, let's get another jury trial, January 26th. So another unknown date, January-ish. The case is reset to February 2nd, 1953. The defendant again tries to waive the jury trial And this time, judge accepts the waiver and calls off the jury trial. So it is set for trial by judge. February 2nd, 1953, the trial by judge begins. All the witnesses were excluded from the courtroom again. So the state witnesses were sworn and testified and cross-examined. Court adjourned. February 3rd, Ryan's birthday.
Oh.
The state continues with the witnesses and they are cross-examined. February 4th, the state's final witnesses are sworn, testified, and are cross-examined. State rest. Defendant files a motion for a directed verdict in favor of the defendant. So defense is like, we're innocent, right? The court hears arguments for and against and denies the motion. Court's like, let's not do this. The defense witnesses are sworn and testified. February 5th, 1953, the state's attorney, this is for case number 603, the state's attorney asks for a leave of court to remove this indictment, and it is now the order of the court that the leave of court be given and the indictment be and is hereby stricken from the record. So the state files to remove those indictments on number 603. I don't know which ones were which, unfortunately. It's because, like I said, the filing is kind of weird. So the state's like, hey, we're going to remove these indictments. The judge agrees, and those indictments were removed from case number 603. Case number 604. This is February 5th, 1953.
What is the difference?
I'm not sure which indictments were for 603 and which ones were 604. I don't know if John was 603 and Joanna 604 or vice versa, or how it was.
Okay.
So it was two separate cases.
Okay.
So 603 was basically dismissed.
Okay, so at the end, I bet that was Joanna's then.
Possibly.
Okay.
It never specifies in the docket.
Okay.
Number 604, February 5th, 1953. The court hears more defense witnesses and are cross-examined, and the defense rests. Rebuttal witnesses are called on behalf of the state, and the state rests. Closing arguments are heard. And I have to read this from a quote from the docket because it's just...
Mm-hmm.
This was the part that was the surprise for you. I know you know that this happened, but it's still...
Mm-hmm.
And now the court, after hearing all the arguments of counsel and being fully advised in the case and from the testimony, the court finds the defendant, Anton Novak, not guilty to the charge of murder as charged in the indictment. So the judge found him not guilty.
Jesus Christ.
After the whole jury trial and all of that, they decided to do a trial by judge, which is shocking to me.
Especially for a murder case. That's
crazy. And the judge finds him not guilty.
That's nuts. First, don't get me wrong, it definitely went in his favor, but also for a murder trial, that's unheard of. And also, that's a lot more risky to do just the opinion of one person. I do find that absolutely appalling. Don't get me wrong. I understand that all the circumstance. Okay, let's. Okay, so now everything is done. He's found not guilty. What are your thoughts?
Side note. It was also rumored that Novak had a mistress.
Yes.
Who may have been an accomplice. However, just a rumor.
Mm-hmm. It was just speculation.
Just a little spice in there for you.
Mm-hmm.
But the murders are still considered to be unsolved to this day.
So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that, unfortunately, there was no murder weapon.
Yes.
It was just a lot of speculation. The whole money thing, the coins, I can see that not holding up in court because it was never confirmed that it was their money. While he had pretty much the same exact amount that the children thought that their parents had, it's just a lot of speculation and hearsay. It's not hard fact and truth.
So do you think
but there's so many convenience?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Coincidences. I just can't get past all those coincidences.
That's what you and I were talking about before we started recording, is because I understand that it's mostly circumstantial. There's not really a ton of hard evidence, and the hard evidence either you can't find or he had someone burn it. So So the thing is, but the circumstantial evidence isn't that outlandish. You'd be like, oh, well, that's hearsay. Like, I understand, like, everything that someone says during a trial, you kind of have to take with a grain of salt unless you have hard, facts.
Right.
However, there's so much of it. There's so much circumstantial evidence that all of it makes sense. And again, it's not like crazy circumstantial evidence where it's like the West Memphis 3 case where 3 boys got charged for a triple homicide of 3 young boys, and they were said to be like involved in Satanism, and people were like, I saw this guy kill a cat, just craziness. It's not like that. Like, this is all very relevant. It's very believable. It's very much like, and not to mention, it's a small town where everyone knows everyone.
And everybody knows everybody's business.
It's too.
Not just that you know everybody, you know everybody's business.
Exactly.
So you know who has the money, you know who's sleeping with who. I mean, you know all of it.
Yup.
So it just hurts me to know that those 2 old people, because he was 70 years old. John was 70, Joanna was 60 something. She probably would like 58, 59. So like they were the milkmen. I mean, that's just
I know. It breaks your heart. And it really it's very unfortunate. It's sad that it still hasn't been solved. It's very sad. And I think he did it.
I think the judge dropped the ball there. I think
he did it. Yeah. I definitely think that the judge and especially but not only I understand the circumstantial evidence, but everything that he started doing and did once,
literally the day the bodies were found.
Exactly. And once his name officially gets put under a person of interest, he still starts doing shady shit.
Yeah.
He left the state
to go to the other side of the country.
Exactly.
And was a shipping clerk. He went from mayor of a town. Now, it was just Panama.
I understand.
But highly respected mayor of a town to a shipping clerk in a brewery? Come on.
Yes. That is...
You're clearly running.
I took a quick job so I can make some cash for my new start. That's what that says. Yes.
Yep.
So I think he did it. And it's not like he can sue me because he's dead. So...
Well, it definitely was not a murder-suicide.
No, absolutely
100%
no.
Not a murder-suicide.
I can just imagine the guffaw in the courtroom.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I
would have been like, are you fucking kidding me?
I probably would have wanted to take the person in front of me and throw them at the defense attorney.
Right, it's just stand up and be like, what? No, it upsets me. That upsets me.
That was even mentioned. That's just a stain on their memory. If that, I mean, seriously.
That in wait, were there children in the courtroom when they were doing their final thoughts?
I mean, maybe because all the witnesses had been, they really could have been because I mean, it was closing arguments that was brought up.
Right.
It was closing arguments is when that was actually brought up. So, I mean, they could have brought the witnesses in for the closing arguments.
Because also I'm thinking okay, so as their children, you're listening to this asshat say, maybe it was a murder-suicide.
There's actually pictures of the Cerkvenick daughters.
Yeah.
So and we'll post that
We'll post those, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's awfully sad. It's really tragic that this was never solved.
Yeah.
And even if Anton was innocent, which I doubt.
No, he wasn't.
He's still kind of an asshole, so
yeah.
Yeah. He's narcissistic, and it's like, I can't possibly be the murderer. Even though I did kill those 2 people, but I can't possibly be.
Because I lost my gun because it made me mad.
Clearly. Because that's what I do with all my expensive equipment. Anything that has physically harmed me, I just toss into the Pacific Ocean. Yeah. Like, damn it. So
I stubbed my toe in my bed. It's gotta go.
I have to throw it into the river.
Yeah. So
stupid.
And it was just convenient. So convenient that he lost his lockbox key in 1949 November and then conveniently found it pretty much 2 years later. Exactly 2 years later, because he said November of 1951. You know, the month the murders happened. That's when he found his lockbox key. So that's when he decided to go get into his lockbox.
Yes. And I'm sorry, but if you are in debt to where you owe the grocer $1,000, you really, it's,
I know, it makes you mad.
If you have money buried in your yard, you're just going to let it sit while you just
accrue all this debt?
Right, where you just drown in just IOUs of, hey, I'll pay you back, grocer. But I mean, like, it's very aggravating. It hurts.
It hurts me. And when I read and I knew that he was found not guilty somehow, but the fact that he had a hung jury at first just shocked me. And then when I read that it was a bench trial that he had the second time around,
where he was found not guilty.
That's when I read the words "was found not guilty of the murders," I was just,
I hope the Cerkvenick children were able to go about their lives without too much trauma.
I know.
From this.
I know. I feel very bad for them.
Yeah. So that is the unsolved murder of John and Joanna Cerkvenick.
Yep.
I wish we could have a happy ending, but
yeah.
Some
of our other ones should have happy endings.
Oh yeah.
Or at least better endings.
Mine.
Do you already know what you're gonna do?
Oh yeah. This is gonna be a surprise. I'm really excited.
I'm excited.
I know. You should be. So, it's not going to be a murder. Mine's going to be a little kooky and fun.
Ooh, exciting.
Yes. So this, even though we recorded it the same day as we did episode 1, but this will be out October 20th.
Which hopefully you're listening to it on that day.
Right. Yes. And yeah, like I said the last time, we are going to try to post one every Tuesday. Of course, that might not happen all the time because, you know,
life.
So yeah, you can find us at Facebook at
2K Away
and on Instagram at 2K Away Podcast. Again, if you have any suggestions, we would love them.
Feel free.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Because we've already had We've already had one suggestion from Kim.
Yes, which we will absolutely cover that.
I will cover that because I'm where it happened. So Kim suggested Kim suggested to do the Black Dahlia, and I will love to do that, but I'll surprise you. And I'll just be like,
Today's the day.
Right. Be like, it's now. Boom. So yeah, that concludes episode 2. And
we hope you liked it.
Yeah, we hope you'll like it. And wherever you listen to your podcast, I honestly can't name all of the hosting platforms because I don't know all of them. Yeah. So if you're on Spotify or Apple iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast, leave us a review. It helps people to find us.
Yeah. And YouTube as well. If you'd like to see our beautiful faces.
Yes, because I will be making that soon. Hopefully
it's already been made by now.
We'll see. But yeah, leave us a review. It helps. Give us 5 stars. Tell us how much you love us. Maybe, I don't know, if you love us, that's fine too. Tell us,
I mean, I love us,
your favorite recipe. I don't know, say that too. All right, so thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.